In simple terms, a variable in Python is like a container or a named storage location that holds a value. It allows you to give a name to a value so that you can refer to it and work with it later in your program. Think of a variable as a labeled box where you can store different things. You can choose a name for the box, and you can put different items inside it or change what's inside it whenever you want. So for example, let's say we want to store a person's age in our code. We can create a variable called age and assign a specific value to it by using the assignment operator. So the assignment operator is represented in Python using the equal sign. And that is essentially this sign here. So let's go ahead and create a variable called age. We'll use the assignment operator. And to the right of the assignment operator is where we'll put the value that we want age to refer to. So let's say the age is 20. In this case, age is the name of the variable and 20 is the value that it holds. Later on in our program, we can use the variable age to refer to this value and perform different operations on it, such as adding, subtracting, multiplying it, and even printing it out to the console. Next, let's go ahead and print out the variable age. And as you can see, we get 20 in the output. And that's because the variable age is assigned to the number 20. Now, variables can hold different kinds of data, such as integers, floats, lists, strings, even booleans, essentially any of the kind of types that we've gone over so far. We can also change the value of a variable by assigning a new value to it. So we can say age is now equal to 27. And let's go ahead and print out this variable, age again. And we'll see now age is set to 27 because that's what we see here in the output. We can also update the value of age by adding to it. So for example, we could say age is now going to be equal to age plus 1. So we know that the current value of age is 27. So here, this is 27, and we're going to add 1 to it. And after this expression evaluates, and we know that 27 plus 1 is 28, we are going to go ahead and assign the variable age to be equal to whatever this expression produces. And we know that this is going to be 28, so age will now be assigned to 28. So let's go ahead and print age, and we should expect to see 28 in the output. And that's exactly what we see. We can also even create new variables from the result of an expression. So for example, I can say new age, and I can say this will be equal to age plus 2. And we know that age is now 28, so we take 28 and we add 2 to it. And we know that this is going to result to 30. So we're going to set this variable, new age, to be equal to 30. Let's go ahead and print this out. And we should expect to see age be 30. Well, in this case, new age should be 30. So if I run this, I see 30. And we can even add some messaging here to make this easier. So let's go ahead and run this again. As you can see, age is 28. We take that age of 28, we add 2. New age is 30. And when we print new age, we get 30. So let's go ahead and see some more examples creating variables and using them. So I'll create a few more variables. I'll create a variable named intro class, and I'll set this equal to a string. And this string will say intro to Python. And we'll go ahead and we'll print out this variable, intro class. And when we run this, we see intro to Python. We can even reassign this variable and set it equal to another string that says, welcome to the Blackprint Intro to Python class. And we'll go ahead and print out this variable again. And we'll go ahead and run this. So as we see in the output, the variable intro class is now reassigned to the string, welcome to the Blackprint Intro to Python class. So we can create variables and we can reassign them. So as you can see here, we assign the variable intro class to be equal to intro to Python. Then we reassigned it here to this new string here. So let's go ahead and create some more variables and go over some more examples. So we can create a variable called greeting and give it the string hello. Let's go ahead and print greeting. You can see in the output, we see hello. We can also even take the variable greeting and multiply it by 3. Now we know that the variable greeting is assigned to the string hello. So what we're really just doing here is taking the string hello and multiplying it by 3. And that should give us hello 3 times. So let's store this into a variable and we'll call this triple greeting. Let's go ahead and print out triple greeting. Let's go ahead and run this. And as you can see, we see hello 3 times. And if we were to print out greeting, we should still just see hello. So this expression gets evaluated and it gets stored into the variable triple greeting. And that has no effect on greeting. Let's go ahead and create another variable. And we'll call this variable welcome. And we'll assign it to the string welcome. Next, we'll create another variable. And this will be called module. And we'll assign it to string module1. Next, let's go ahead and do some string concatenation and combine welcome and module. So the result that we want to get is welcome to module1. So let's go ahead and print this out. We'll say welcome. And then we'll add a space, the string to, and then another space afterwards. And then we'll add module. So here we have welcome, which will be this string here. So don't get confused because the variable name is welcome and the string that it's assigned to is also welcome. This is just a variable and this here is the string welcome. And this variable welcome is assigned to the string welcome. So this here refers to the string welcome. We're going to add a space, the word to, another space, and then the variable module, which is module1. So we should expect this to say, welcome to module1. So let's go ahead and print this out by running our code. And we can see here, that is the output that we get. Welcome to module1. We can also set variables to be equal to lists. So we can create a variable named list of numbers and set it equal to a list that contains the numbers 1, 2, and 3. And let's go ahead and print out this list. Let's go ahead and run this. And here we see our list that contains the numbers 1, 2, and 3. We could also create an expression using list of numbers. And let's print out the result of that expression. So we'll take list of numbers and we'll multiply it by 3. So let's go ahead and run this. As we can see, we see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we take the original list and we multiply by 3. And that's why we see 1, 2, 3, a set of 3 times. Let's create a few more variables and we'll assign them to Booleans. So create a variable name is hungry, and we'll assign the value true. And we'll create another variable called is tired, and we'll set it equal to a Boolean value of false. And let's go ahead and print them out. So the first argument I'll pass to the print function will be is hungry, and then we'll put the actual variable. And we'll do the same thing for is tired. So this way, when we have the string here, when we see in the output, we'll be able to know the value that it's referring to. So let's go ahead and run this. And we can see is hungry is true and is tired is false. Next, let's create a few more variables. So I'll create a variable called number of students, and I'll set it equal to 100. I'll create another variable, number of professors, and I'll set the value to 10. And then we can use these variables to perform different types of operations. So we could do number of students divided by number of professors. We could store this into a variable called result, and then we could go ahead and print result. Let's go ahead and run this code. And as you can see, we get 10.0. So when we divide 100 by 10, this is the result. We get a float. We can also set variables to be equal to the result of calling a function. So for example, we know that the type function returns data. So for example, if I were to call type and pass in the string good morning, I know that this is going to return the class string type. And I can actually store this into a variable. So we'll go ahead and name this variable type of text. So essentially, whatever the type function returns, we are going to assign that to this variable type of text. And let's go ahead and print out type of text. And let's go ahead and run this. And we see we get the stir type. Next, let's go over another example. And this time we'll create a variable called list of fruits. And we'll assign this to a list that contains a few fruits. So we'll say orange, apple, and watermelon. So let's create another variable. And this time we'll say length of list. And we'll assign this to be equal to the length of the list of fruits. And we know that in Python, we can use the built-in length function to help us determine the size of list of fruits. So we'll go ahead and call the function. We'll have open and close parentheses. And inside the parentheses, we'll place the list of fruits. And this length function should calculate the amount of items that exist in this list. And we know just by looking at it, we can see that it has 3 items. So after this gives us 3, we're going to go ahead and set this equal to this variable length of list. So let's go ahead and print out length of list. And we should expect to see 3. So let's go ahead and run this. And we see 3. So we can assign variables to be equal to the result of an expression or to be equal to the result of calling a function. Because if a function returns data, we can then take that data and set it equal to a variable. So I'm sure by now you've seen how variables are useful. They allow you to store and manipulate data dynamically throughout your program. They also provide you a way to refer to values with meaningful names, making your code more readable and flexible. These ultimately result in your code being more manageable. This is why it's also extremely important when you're naming variables to choose good variable names, because this will aid in your program being more readable and understandable. So that essentially wraps up variables. Every language, whether it's English or Python, has a set of rules that must be followed in order to be understood. Python's rules are referred to as Python syntax. Variable names in Python must follow a certain syntax. Otherwise, it will result in an error. Let's go over some of the Python syntax rules and guidelines for naming variables. So one of them is Python variables must start with a letter or an underscore. Variables cannot start with a number. Variables can only contain alphanumeric characters and underscores. So letters A through Z, whether capital or lowercase, are all valid, and you can mix and match. Numbers from 0 to 9 are also valid, and you can also have an underscore. So let's look at a few examples of legal variable names and illegal variable names. So some examples of legal variable names are as follows. Here we have my age, all lowercase, no spaces. We have my underscore age. We have underscore my underscore age. We have my capital A age. And we have all caps my age. We have lowercase my age with the number 2. And these are all valid variable names. And these are all valid variable names because none of them break any of these guidelines. Next, let's look at examples of illegal variable names. So here we have my age starting with the number 2. Next, we have my dash age. Lastly, we have my space age. And we can see here when we compare it with the guidelines, each one of these variable names breaks one of these guidelines. So for example, the first variable starts with a number, and variables cannot start with a number. Next, the second variable has a dash, and we know that dashes are not allowed in variable names. Variable names can only contain letters from A to Z, whether capital or lowercase. They can contain numbers 0 to 9 or an underscore. And here we have a dash. So that's why this is an illegal variable name. Next, we have my space age, and variables cannot have a space. So that's why this variable is an invalid or illegal variable name. And that essentially wraps up how to name variables in Python. Let's go over some best practices for naming variables in Python. So the first one is a variable name should be snake case, where each English word is separated by an underscore. So let's see what this looks like. Let's say I have a variable named list of numbers. So we know that list is a valid English word. So now I want to have an underscore. Next I have of, and I know of is a valid English word. So I want to have an underscore. And then I have numbers at the end. And I'll set this equal to an empty list. Let's say I have another variable name, and this one will be called list of ages. Similarly, as before, every valid English word will be separated by an underscore. Let's say I have another variable. This one will be called intro class. And I know intro is a valid English word, so I have an underscore. And then I'll have class. I can set this equal to a string, and we can say intro to Python. Now, generally speaking, Python is a snake case language. So whenever we are naming things, it's always best to name things in a snake case way. And in a broader sense, in the Python community, when other Python programmers are looking at your code, typically they expect your code to follow these best practices. That way, it makes it easier to understand the code that you're writing. Next, let's go over another best practice. And this one will be a variable name should be lowercase. So typically when we're naming variables, we don't want to do things like age equals 4. This is a bad practice. naming a variable all lowercase would be a better idea. This is better. And the same goes for naming variables that can have multiple English names. So instead of doing something like list of numbers is equal to an empty list, this would be a bad practice. We could instead do list of numbers, where every character is lowercase. The next best practice is variable names should be descriptive. This is something that I see commonly with people that are new to programming. They'll give variable names any kind of random name. For example, they'll create a variable name x, and they'll set it equal to a list of numbers. Now let's say later on, you come down and you can no longer see x, and you print x. Well, if I were to ask you, what is x? After say you've written maybe 100 lines of code, you would have no idea what x is. Very confusing, especially for somebody else that's reading your code. This is why it's very important to choose descriptive variable names. So if I go ahead and run this, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4. So x is a valid variable name, although it's not the best choice of a name. So let's go ahead and leave a comment, and we'll say bad choice for a variable name. Oh, let's actually move this up, delete that line. Now, if we had a variable name list of numbers, and we were to set this to a list of numbers, and let's say several hundred lines later, you were to print list of numbers, and I asked you, what is list of numbers? It'd be very obvious, right? Because we know that the variable is named list of numbers, so it's more likely than not that the variable is a list that contains numbers. So if we were to print this out, we would also see a list of numbers from 1 to 4. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to choose good variable names. In fact, they typically say in coding, one of the hardest things about programming is choosing good variable names. So whenever you have the opportunity, it's good to try practicing this now. That way, as you're programming more and more, you'll build up this skill, and choosing good variable names will be second nature to you. In addition, good variable names could be the difference between your code being easy and difficult to read, not only for yourself, but also for other people that may be reading your code. Another best practice when naming variables is that a variable name should not be the same name as a type in Python. So let's go ahead and write this out. A variable name should not be the same name as a type in Python. Therefore, avoid using the following variable names. So for example, we wouldn't want to name a variable int, because int is actually the name of a type in Python. So bad choice of a variable name. In addition, stir is also the name of a type in Python. This would also be a bad choice of a variable name. List is also the name of a type in Python. So this would also be a bad choice of a variable name. The same for bool. The same for float. Oops, let's go ahead and put a float first. Then we can add this comment. Let's add the comment here as well. So in summary, avoid using the name of a type as a variable name in Python. One thing to keep in mind is that in Python, variable names are case sensitive. So for example, if we were to create a variable named age and set it to 20, and in this case, age is all lowercase, and we were to create another variable, also called age, but all capital, and set this equal to 20, these are not the same variables. So if I were to go ahead and print age, or actually let's set this to 25. So we can actually confirm that this age did not get reassigned to 25. So I'll print out age. I expect this to be 20. I'll print out age, all capital. I'll expect this to be 25. And then I'll print out age again. And it should still be 20. So this age should not reassign age because these are two completely different variables because variable names are case sensitive. So let's go ahead and print this out. So after we run, we see age, all lowercase is 20. Age, all capital is 25. And when we print out age, all lowercase again, it's still 20. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And that essentially sums up best practices for naming variables in Python.